You want to be like so confident in your skating and so comfortable with your skating that you're not thinking about it when the puck gets on your stick. So I want to go through a couple specific things about skating mechanics. I basically wrote down like every component I could think of, and then I'm gonna go through them, and then I want you to like stop me if you have um, either something that you've recognized as being a common issue, or just if you have something to say about it in general, a fix, or maybe there's not a right way to do it when people think there is, or whatever comment, just like interject it while I say it. Or I'll interrupt myself and talk about it too if I feel like it. So the first one, these are just kind of like the fundamentals of skating mechanics in no particular order. I just wrote down all the things that I kind of thought. So the first thing is having a balanced posture. So that's number one. So if you're off balance, and that can mean a bunch of different things, but if you're off balance, then nothing's gonna happen, right? Because you feel like you're off balance.
So in every sport, there's a certain position that is optimal,
Mhm.
and as soon as you get outside of that, you become weaker, less effective. Boxing, there's a stance.
Yeah.
There's where your
So funny
elbows
you say
need to
that.
be.
Yeah,
What?
so fun. I was just about to say bring up
Yeah,
boxing and then
right.
jujitsu. I was just about to
Yeah.
bring those up.
So like if you start throwing, off balance with your footwork off and your arms are out wide, you're gonna get hammered, and you're just not gonna be as effective. Whereas if your elbows are in, like look at me, you can just scrap it, right? Protect yourself, but like throwing right and coming from the hips and just making that quick, like the most efficient punch makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
it's the same
So
with skating.
I was gonna give the analogy with jujitsu. There's this guy at the gym that I roll with. I don't want to say hate, but he's the worst guy to roll with because I think he just got his brown belt. His name is Mike. He's not gonna listen, so it doesn't matter. Um, and this guy is the master, at least to me, of all the people that I roll with. He can make me off balance so easy. Like he just rides my movement to get me off balance, and then it's so easy to just topple me over, And so the whole time I'm fighting with him, I just feel awkward. I just feel like I'm not in a good spot, even if I am in a good spot, just because he pulls my arm across my body a little bit, or like I start to move this way and he bumps me further this way. Like these kinds of things where it's like it's just really easy for him to flip me over, and I'm a heavy guy, so it's like it makes me feel like unathletic or like I'm just in a bad spot. And it's the exact same thing with skating. Like if your limbs are in weird positions or your body's not in the right position to keep you balanced, then you're not gonna be optimal. You're gonna feel weird and awkward, right? So that was my first one. Second one, this kind of I feel like most people know this is just the stride length. Obviously, a longer stride is better for generating power simply because you're pushing off the ground for a longer period of time. And then you have more opportunity to do that pull motion of bringing your leg back and driving your knee forward, right? So you're covering further distance. So the more distance you cover with the stride, then the more power you're
Yeah.
going to be able to
And then
generate.
your glide is doing some work.
That's right.
Even though you're not working, it's working.
Yeah, I think I have the glide in here too at some point. So that's the second one. Third one is the arm position. So I want to talk about this one too because I remember when I started teaching about like the arm swing, because this is a common thing, like especially with younger kids, like they want to throw the arms across their body, whatever. And I think generally speaking, if you're gonna throw your arms across your body, that's not good because your shoulders are start to rotate, and now you're not in the direction that you're trying to go. But it also doesn't have to be like straight arm pump. And I remember that was, I think, a mistake I was making as a teacher when I was younger. Is like I would say, like, make sure you keep your arms on their own side, kind of thing.
We were thinking more along the lines of a runner in
Yeah,
that sense, a
yeah,
sprinter,
right.
right? That would be very inefficient to rotate your body. But in hockey, it's a little bit different because you have that. I'm gonna sound like a doctor. External rotation of your arse, right? Of your buttocks. So like your hips rotate a bit, so it's like your whole body does twist a little bit. It's not going to be perfectly straight. So a little bit of a rotation or a little bit of your arm swing coming across your body, not across like this, but there is like a, I don't know what angle that is, but
Well, I think
maybe it comes to the other side of the face of your face.
I think it would be the same as I was saying with the jujitsu examples. Like if your arm starts to come across your body to the point where your shoulder starts to rotate, that's where you're gonna start to get some issues in the stride. Um, I don't really know what I mean by this, so maybe you can
Ha!
give me an
Good
idea.
thing you put it
I
down.
I know I wrote down like edge control. Maybe that's like agility, maybe, but I don't know what I mean by that. But like just like feeling like being able to feel your blades, we talked about this in the power skating episode too, like just being that people say that like get comfortable on your edges and like be able to, you go like heel to toes and those kinds of things. Or I know the example I'm thinking of is on the ice when you do those wide stick handles and you're like, so when you're on the one side, you're on like toe, other side's on the heel, vice versa kind of thing. So you're
Yeah, the best way, like when you threw it out there like that, like because I'm for me the term edges bothers me because like people make it sound like, oh, he's good on his edges, or look at his edge work. It's like, it's, to me it's just skating.
skating is on your edges. Yeah.
Yeah, but having said that, there are like, and I have a hard time putting a sentence around it. The only way I know how to do it is that when I teach it on the ice is that um, any skill that you have is, it's okay to be able to do a skill. It might look good. The next question is if you had to get out of that position because it didn't work. So right. So if you were doing let's say you pulled the puck in. I'll just use that for example. Right. So you pull the puck into your feet. If the weight's not transferred properly, if someone gets in your lane now, can you shoot? Can you make a play? Can you get out of that position? That's what I talk about when I'm talking being comfortable on your skates. So the way that I can show it and explain it, but like there's too many examples right now to come up with it. So if my thing is that if it feels right and you know what right feels like, then it's probably right. If it feels off or not uncomfortable, because that's not the necessarily the right term, but it might be, is that if it feels like it's not fluid, if it feels like you can't get out of that naturally, then definitely there's something wrong. So that's what I was saying. Like if you, so when people say skating, like you finish off at your toe when you're skating. Yes and no. Yes, if you're going a straight line forward and your nose is going to the net or whatever, and you're going a straight line. But if you want to have any type of agility, if you want to make a lateral move or whatever, you're not so much on your sometimes you are, but if you want to make a quick movement, then you're loading up on your heels more with your ass down and pushing out. So like that just takes some practice. That takes some skill work. That takes being aware of like, okay, this feels right. And then for some people it's just natural.
Yeah, I like the framing of being able to escape or do something else. So like make a move, can you make another one where it
Can you get
feels,
out of that?
yeah, where it
You
feels
have an
natural.
escape move.
Yeah, I think that's the best way of framing the edge stuff too, because now you're taking the edge work thing and now you're putting it into like actual hockey. I think that's the difference because when you talk about edge work, it's not really specific of like like what is this for, because then you think of like edge work around the cones, the 10 and 2s, like all this stuff that we talk about, which is fine. But
Crossovers,
yeah, yeah,
turns.
but it's not hockey. Whereas if you think of it like if you make a move in a game, can you make another one? Can you escape? Now we're talking about applying that comfortability on your skates to the actual game. So that would be another one. Um, Speaking of that, would be crossovers. So the one thing you talk about a lot with crossovers, I've noticed when you teach it, is there's the crossover, but there's the cross under, and how like the crossover takes it's both 2 feet. They both have a job in doing the movement. So talk a little bit about that piece of it, the over part. But then what do you mean when you're talking about like the cross under
Yeah,
after you finish?
it's not rocket science,
That's
right?
fine.
No, no, yeah, I know it's fine. Not rocket science, but I just say the guys that aren't great skaters or possibly maybe just younger, that that everyone talks about a push, right? So it's that outside finishing to the toe, which people get, so they push hard. But what I find the biggest deficiency when kids are skating or players are skating, it's the cross under where they don't generate quite as much power. So what you'll see is like, in my opinion, is that if you listen to someone do a crossover, it should sound the same. So if it's like the outside is shh, the inside should be shh, not sound effect. It's a sound effect. I not shh, shh. And that's inside foot is like they're just not generating enough. They're not finishing at the toe as well, or they're not extending quite as well. So you see, and then you'll see like a little bit of a hop sometimes, and sometimes very subtle. So in order like fixing that is just do you can do drills. There's a drill you can do, right, where you're doing like big crossovers, but you're making sure that you're maximizing both strides, so it should sound basically the same. and right, it should take the same time. And then even if you're doing the quicker ones, it should be the same thing, generating power from both sides. So it's like, I think the cross under is probably the outside edge of a crossover or cross under is probably the most underutilized. Is that the word? Or
Underdeveloped.
underdeveloped
Yeah.
in a crossover.
Yeah. Good. That's exactly what I wanted you to say. So there you go.
If you look at and so if you look at someone stopping in hockey, what's the hardest edge to stop on if you're just using one leg, right? So if you like, very easy for some because kids actually learn how to snowplow. I mean, that's a tactic, right? Um, so if you were to do a inside foot stop, that's the hardest one for kids to get because balance is off, and it's like, they if they get it, they might chatter. They feel like they're gonna fall.
Yeah, one place that you can see it too. I remember I'm you're talking about that, and I was thinking of. I remember a highlight of Austin Matthews scoring where he did like a regroup in the neutral zone, and he just picks up so much steam. But one place you can see it is, I would say, like like watch guys on power play breakouts where the forwards come back, they're deep in their zone, and they go around the circle, and they're doing that crossover, cross under, and it looks like they're not going hard. But by the time they hit the blue line, it's like they have so much steam because both of that like the pace of the crossover cross under is the same. So then that's where you get McDavid looked like he wasn't even skating hard, but he gets the puck at the red line and he's just blowing by everybody. And it looked like he wasn't trying. It's like he's generating so much power on those crossovers turning around that it's
Well,
hard
oh,
to.
there's one. Would you consider him? I can't even remember like on the top of my head, but does he look like he's really low, or does he look like he's straighter up?
He reminds me more of like a Taylor Hall. Like he looks
Does he
more
a
like
little
a
wider?
little bit wider,
Yeah,
but he almost looks like he does that weird thing where it's like when he's doing his crossovers, he looks like he's almost standing up. Like he does
yeah,
those quick
yes, yes,
quick
yes, yes,
crossovers.
yes,
He
yeah.
does those. But I think when he's doing like the straight line skating, he reminds me more like that Taylor Hall look, that a little bit wider base. But I'd have to go and look now that I'm
Yeah,
saying that.
no, I'm
But
thinking about.
that is what
He's
I
got to
think.
get low,
Yeah,
obviously.
that's what I think. I think he's got that little bit wider
Yeah, I think you're right.
set. But a powerful push, we can kind of breeze off that. It's just like actually trying to be intentional about the stride. Um, Being stable in your core. That's a big one. Actually, these two kind of go together with me: the core stability and then your upper body coordination. So like the core stability part is kind of everything starts from that, right? I remember we talked to Chad from Edmonton about that. He was talking about how to fix skating mechanics, and he didn't like the question either because it's so.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
he doesn't like because actually we specifically asked like how do I get faster, and he doesn't like that question. And then we got into the skating mechanics, and he was talking about one of his three pillars of um, becoming a better skater is having some core strength, right? Core stability, because we're starting from that center of gravity position where you're low, right? So if you can't brace, if you don't have strength through your trunk, then it's going to be hard to get yourself in a good position.
Yeah, and so I had Charlie with a track coach this summer. Interesting because they're explaining it was near the end of the summer too, doing drills where you're doing the knee drive, but doing the knee drive where you're totally engaging the core and not letting your other muscles take over. And what a challenge. So that's a very underdog. Like, who thinks so you skate with your belly? Really? Well, you do,
Well, and then the other
because
sorry,
that's your power. Yeah.
well,
Anyways, go.
the other thing too is like people don't really know what the core is. Like people think abs is core, and it's like front and back. The way I say it is like the posterior side, front side, chest down, knees up. Like there's parts in there of everything that could be considered core. So it's not like just your abs contracting. That's core strength. Um, but the big thing for that is if you can't stabilize your core, then it's going to be really hard to maintain a good hip hinge when you're trying to skate. It's like all of that. Right? If you ever done a back squat or you ever do a deadlift, it's like you have to have that brace the whole time, or your posture just breaks down. Right, so it has to be strong, and it's the same with the skating. And then next to that was the upper body coordination. This is one that I find kids struggle with a lot when you tell them how to fix it. So it's if they're thinking too much and they can't figure out the coordination piece. But the way that you could talk about it in terms of like having a rhythm, like where things kind of flow the same way. I notice it a lot when we do like a single leg box jump or a step up, explosive step up. A lot of kids they don't have the mapping of the arm swing with the leg, the opposite arm, opposite leg drive at the same time. Like they don't have that. And you can notice if you get into that comfortable groove, your body has like a natural flow to it, where like your opposite arm and opposite leg kind of want to do the same movement pattern. If you're going forward, they're going forward. If it's going back, it's going back at the same time on opposites. So that's kind of something else that you can look for. Frequency of the stride, that kind of goes with the stride length. If you're taking like shorter, choppier strides, obviously that's um,
Yeah, but the frequency of it, a lot of people think again, it's important to understand there's the push, but it's the pull. So having a good, strong hip flexors,
mhm,
right, to drive that,
and flexible.
yeah,
Yeah.
to
Well,
drive the knee forward is a really important part that is probably another very underdeveloped or one that doesn't get as much attention.
yeah, and
I'm sure really good pro skaters understand that, but I mean in general,
the other element of it too, I think, is increasing the frequency while maintaining the long stride. That's a hard thing that people struggle with when they're developing um, as skaters. Like, I'll tell kids like, "Okay, like we're going like slow and long." Like that's what I always say. Like try to go slow on purpose, keep the stride long, and then I'll tell them like whatever a little bit later. I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna speed it up now. We're gonna go faster, but you have to maintain that stride." And they want to go back to the running now, like the quick feet, the 1, 2, 3, right? So frequency, the stride frequency, maintaining that good stride length. That's another area where as you're picking up speed, still keeping that full extension and the full knee drive coming back. That's important. Um, Acceleration is one, like the 1, 2, 3s. This is like the most common thing, that people ask about. Like you mentioned before, is like the quick start, like other foot speed, these kinds of things, and a lot of that isn't actually going to come from like doing it on the ice. Like a lot of that can start to come from off ice stuff, just getting stronger. But the flip side of that is the deceleration, right? It's like the speeding up, but then slowing down. Like it's weird that people never like they don't think about that, or it's just not emphasized ever. But it's the exact opposite of the acceleration. It's like you want to take off quick. You also want to be able to slow down quick, right? Like you want to be able to slow down on a dime and rip back the other way. So it's like that deceleration part is just as important as accelerating. It's you go to stop, you decelerate first before you take off, right? So it's both
yeah,
both halves of that.
and it's learning how to load the springs to take off again.
And that's all your direction changes, right? You're trying to change direction, you have to do both. You have to be able to load and push, and that goes to your weight transfer thing, right? Being able to swing it onto the one leg, push off. Um, and then obviously you need to practice and repeat all that kind of stuff. But the last thing is then being able to do it with the puck. That's where things can kind of get messy too, where you get open ice, you can skate beautifully, and then as soon as the puck comes to you, it's like you have to have your head down, and now you can't take the way that I always talk about with any skills. Like you want to be able to take the skill for granted. So you want to be like so confident in your skating and so comfortable with your skating that you're not thinking about it when the puck gets on your stick, or vice versa. Like you want to be so comfortable with the puck on your stick that it's just you're thinking about playing. You're not thinking about, oh, I have to stick handle now and whatever. It has to be just like on automatic, right?
Yeah, like
So
a boxer, you throw a punch at him, he's used to that. He sees it. He doesn't panic.
right.
He doesn't make a 6 foot move
Mhm.
to get out of the way. He just parries it or he takes one step.